Hi, I'm Ryland Meadows with Ryland's Amazing Photography. I'm a 17-year-old professional photographer that specializes in pretty much any niche of outdoor photography. And today I want to talk to you about if the Nikon Z9 is going to make you a better photographer. I want to clarify that today's video is not sponsored by Nikon, but I do want to take a second to thank our sponsor, which just so happens to be me. You can head over to www.rylandsamazingphotography.com/links or use the link down in the description and in the pinned comment. On that link you can find all sorts of links to my different social media platforms, so make sure that you follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even subscribe on YouTube. You can also find a link to my print store, and if you use the offer code Nikon Z9 at checkout, which was made especially for this video, you can get 10% off your entire order from my print shop. So make sure that you go and check that out. So in order to become a better photographer, you have to understand what makes you a better photographer. And in contemplating this and thinking about it, I thought of 3 things that I believe actually makes you a better photographer. And those 3 things are understanding light, being able to change your camera settings, and understanding composition and being able to use compositional techniques that makes your image just look nice and put together. And so is the Nikon Z9 going to make you better at those things? Well, the honest answer is no, but that doesn't mean that it can't make you a better photographer. Here's why. The Nikon Z9 has top-of-the-line technological advances that most cameras just can't give you. And I want to take a second to talk about some of those, because while it doesn't necessarily make you a better photographer, it makes your job easier and hence can sort of make you a better photographer. I don't really know how to put it into words. It gives you techniques and technological advances that other cameras just can't give you. So while it might not make you a better photographer, it kind of gives you an edge on your competition. So it kind of puts you ahead of the game of maybe other photographers that might be better than you. Some of the technological advances that the Nikon Z9 has to offer include being able to shoot 120 frames per second. Now, granted, I know that the 120 frames per second that this camera is able to put out is not in RAW and it's not the highest quality JPEG, but nonetheless, it's 120 frames per second. I believe it's a 12 megapixel file. I could be wrong. I'll put it on the screen if I'm wrong what it is. But being able to shoot 120 frames per second is just something that you really can't fathom. It's literally shooting a video in photos. And now, a lot of the times I don't use this, and that's because of the fact I'm not getting the full high quality RAW file that I would like to have. However, if you're shooting like a major sporting event like the Kentucky Derby, for example, which just happened, I believe that it would be nice to have 120 frames that you can choose from and determine. You could literally pinpoint any moment and just be able to choose that, and just like, I mean, it's literally like picking frames from a video, but it's higher quality. And I'm sorry, there was a bug in my eye. While you're able to do that at 120 frames per second, that's something that no other camera can offer you. You cannot pull a frame from a video that's 120 frames per second and have it as high quality as 12 megapixels typically. So I just think that really puts you ahead of the competition. Granted, this camera also does 20 frames per second, which is not as fast as the Sony A1. The Sony A1 does 30 frames per second. However, you're not going to see a huge difference in 20 frames and 30 frames, and it shoots completely silent, which is really exceptionally handy for wildlife photographers. I've already found that out shooting wildlife. It's so much easier to take photos from a deer and a blind when you don't have to risk them hearing your camera shutter. I mean, it's incredible. This camera has technological advances, and this is not the only advance. 120 frames per second and silent shutter and 20 frames per second are not the only technological advances that this camera has to offer. So I want to talk about some more of those, and at the end of the video we're really going to determine if the Z9 makes you a better photographer. Another thing that I believe can kind of put you ahead of your competition but not necessarily make you a better photographer, is the autofocus performance that this camera has. There is no other Nikon camera that can compete with the autofocus of the Nikon Z9, and that's not me being biased or anything, that's literally a fact. There's no other camera that is Nikon that can compete with this incredible flagship mirrorless camera. It can't. It's got outstanding focus, autofocus for people, for wildlife, for cars, literally any scenario that you can think of, this camera's got you covered. I feel like I'm never going to have to use manual focus again in my life. And even on my D500, every now and then I would find a scenario where I felt more comfortable using manual focus because I didn't think the camera could handle it in autofocus. However, I believe that this camera can handle any situation using autofocus. I mean, it's just incredibly outstanding. And I truly can't find a downside of the camera itself. But is it going to make you a better photographer? That's the key thing we're wanting to know here. And I'm still not sure. I want to talk about a few of the other amazing features that this camera has to offer you and debate if it's going to make you a better photographer after I tell them. This camera has incredible top-of-the-line ISO performance. This is the first camera that I've ever owned that I feel comfortable leaving it in auto ISO. I've never did that before. I've always chose my ISO manually. Now granted, every now and then I find a scenario where I should be choosing my ISO manually, and I still go in and do that, but for the most part I'm comfortable leaving this camera in auto ISO. The sensor readout speed of this camera is absolutely insane. A really good example of this is the best example I can think of is when you're photographing something like a baseball game. When you photograph the ball flying towards the batter at 90 miles an hour, a lot of the times the ball is going to look distorted and almost look like an egg shape. And granted, that's still probably going to happen with this camera because it's 90 miles an hour, but for the most part it's not noticeable. And that's really impressive as well because they've taken out the mechanical shutter. This is only electronic shutter. There's no mechanical shutter in here. Even other top-of-the-line mirrorless cameras still include a mechanical shutter, so you're able to switch back and forth from a mechanical to electronic shutter. But they took the mechanical shutter entirely out of the Nikon Z9, and that was something that a lot of people were afraid of, but I believe that it's made it that much better of a camera without having it. So incredible auto ISO, incredible readout speeds, no mechanical shutter, insanely high quality EVF, amazing autofocus, amazing back screen displays. It's very durable, it feels nice in my hands. Every single button is exactly where I believe it should be. I have no problems with the ergonomics of the camera. It's weather sealed, it has all these fancy ports that you can use for whatever. You can do you can charge the camera using USB-C. You don't even have to take the battery out. There's so many amazing features from this camera, but is it going to make you a better photographer? So I believe that I've finally reached a decision on if the Nikon Z9, yeah, I still just love saying that. The fact that I own this camera is mind-blowing to me. Anyways, I finally reached my decision on if the Nikon Z9 is going to make you a better photographer. And it's actually a little bit of an indecisive final decision. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a professional photographer and you've been doing this for a long time and you've mastered light, you've mastered composition, and you've mastered changing your camera settings, I think that the Nikon Z9 is going to make you a better photographer just because of the fact it has technological advances that no other camera has. This camera is going to give you features that you can't get with any DSLR or for the most part any other mirrorless camera, especially any other mirrorless Nikon camera. However, if you're a younger photographer, you're a beginner photographer, even if you're just an intermediate photographer, this camera is not going to make you a better photographer. You need to master your understanding of light. You need to be able to shoot in, I'm going to say, any lighting scenario, not just golden hour, blue hour, and when it's overcast. You need to be able to shoot in any lighting condition because when it comes to clients, you never know when they're going to be like, hey, let's go do this shoot in the middle of the day, and you need to be able to compensate for that. You need to be able to do what that client wants you to do. So it's very important for you to master light. before you would upgrade to this camera. It's also important for you to have a very, very, very good understanding of camera settings. You need to fully understand shutter speed. You need to fully understand ISO. You need to fully understand your f-stop and aperture. It's important to understand your white balance, understand your exposure compensation. There's a lot of camera settings, even autofocus, and using it. There's a lot of just different camera settings that you need to have a full, complete understanding of. And finally, it's very important that you have an understanding of composition. You need to understand the rule of thirds, the rule of space, and you need to understand that a lot of the times even a compositional technique like one of those just don't necessarily make a photo good. You need to not be afraid to experiment and try different techniques that even you make up on your own. The rule of thirds is not the solution to every single photograph that you're going to take. Don't be afraid to experiment. So like I said, if you're an advanced photographer, you understand light, you understand camera settings, and you understand composition, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and tell you the Nikon Z9 is probably going to make you a better photographer simply because of its incredible technological advances. If you're a beginner photographer or an intermediate photographer, or just kind of like a hobbyist photographer even, you're not looking to make money, you're just having fun with it, I don't think that the Nikon Z9 is going to make you a better photographer on its own. The only thing that can really make you a better photographer is practicing with the gear that you have. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I want to know if you own a Nikon Z9, or even if you don't own a Nikon Z9, do you think this camera is going to make you a better photographer? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree with what I said? Don't be afraid to tell me. I can take criticism. I've got a lot of followers on Instagram and I have a decent amount of subscribers and get a lot of views on YouTube. I can deal with my fair share of criticism, to say the least. So please let me know down in the comments. If you are new around here, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video. It helps me out a lot. And also be sure to go check me out on my other social media platforms, especially Instagram. I post things on there daily and it's a really great way to stay updated on my life. If you want to see more Nikon Z9 content, believe me, I have that coming. I'm going to have a full hands-on review by the end of the summer if you're interested in buying this top-of-the-line mirrorless Nikon camera. And also, I have a trip where I'm headed off to Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone National Park, and Glacier National Park, and all that is coming up. I don't leave this week, but I leave the next, and I'm going to have an amazing, see what I did there, Ryland's amazing photography, I'm going to have an amazing video coming out on that very shortly, and I'm really excited to take that trip, and I've got some high hopes. Anyways, once again, thank you all so much for watching today's video. It means the world to me, and that's all I've got for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have an amazing day.